Okay, I'd like to call the Ellis County Commission meeting to order. Can we all please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Bobby, can you call roll, please?
Commissioner Nathan Liker.
Here.
Chair Neil Younger.
Here.
Commissioner Michael Burgess.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Order of business stays the same. There will be no executive sessions. Everybody had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Consent agenda.
I'll move to approve consent agenda items A through G.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Okay, anyone in the audience like to talk, speak? No? Okay. Okay, the township public hearing.
That's you.
I forgot already. Bobby Dreiling, County Clerk. We're here today on the public hearing for any township individuals that wanted to come in and ask any questions of the dissolution and reorganization of the township. So I will need a motion to open up the public hearing for discussion.
I'll move to open public hearing for discussion of township dissolution and reorganization.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion approved.
And
Oh,
it looks like we don't
We
have
have-
anybody that has any questions, or Janet? Okay.
okay.
I'm Janet Schmidt, and I'm a member of the Catherine Township. And I just asked Bobby a couple questions. So we would be moving into a township that has a lot higher mill levy. Now, this is kind of directed to you, Bobby, because I don't know anything about this. So when you incorporate all of that extra area into that, their levy should go down because they would collect from more places than from the little spot, right?
Right, there'll be more value. I mean, and that's not going to go in effect until next year.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
And because.
And then
know,
you answered that other
They're
question.
still levying and working on values of just their own township.
Right, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Obviously, since we're going to the budget, I'll ask kind of a follow-up to that. Townships are also required under the revenue neutral, so whatever that township expended or raised, now that it's more people, they would also fall under revenue neutral and keep the same amount of revenue, correct?
Right, they still have to follow the revenue neutral rate guidelines as does all the other taxing districts.
We good?
Okay.
Now move to close public hearing?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion approved. Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you.
Okay, the monthly financial report. Everybody had a chance to? Okay.
Good.
And then the monthly departmental report. Everybody good?
I'm good.
Yep, looks good.
Okay. All right, moving on to noxious weed. Gary?
Good morning, Commissioners. Gary Haas, Weed Control Supervisor, and with me is Brendan McKay, Public Works Director. I'm here this morning with our noxious weed 2024 budget proposal. I think you are aware, in speaking with Darren and Brendan, that this budget reflects a reorganization within Public Works, with the weed department performing more of the mowing, the tree removal, and the trash removal in our county right-of-ways. In doing this, we feel we can better utilize our employees and equipment, and in keeping our right-of-ways clear and safe for the driving public. Reflected in the budget would be with the reorganization, would be the hiring of 2 additional operators for the additional duties. Our office coordinator currently, she currently is 50% of her salary is paid by Road and Bridge, and that would be changed over to where it would be 100% weed department. With the additional operators, we will be able better to utilize our existing spray equipment. As I know some of you probably realize, the way with the chemical resistance that we have with some of the weeds, we need to get them when they're small, and get the weeds when they're that tall instead of 2 foot tall. And with just 2 of us doing it, it's kind of hard to do, to try to cover the whole county. When the weather dictates that we can't spray, when the wind's blowing or it's too hot, we will be able to jump over into the mowers and kind of go together and, let the mowing and the spraying work together to do that. And also reflected in the budget proposal is the reallocating of the utilities, the gasoline, and the diesel expenses, which currently Road and Bridge forever has always been, it's all been on the Road and Bridge budget. It hasn't come out of noxious weed, and now it will. And in doing this, we will reach the 1.5 mil equivalency by Kansas statute, bringing a savings on the chemical cost share program. So any questions?
We're just going to, with this transition, we're just more or less going to break noxious weed out to more of its own department and itemize it and get a better accounting for what it's doing.
Right. It'll still be under Public Works, but yes, it will be more. It does have its own budget and all that, but we always worked jointly, and we still will, but
Right.
all the expenses will be over. Our expenses will be on noxious weed, and Road and Bridge will be Road and Bridge.
Just be a little more itemized,
Yeah.
is all it'll amount to. But
Right.
you got any concerns about the changes?
Finding the good help, so hopefully that works out okay. No, I think it's going to work good. I think the more and more just here lately driving around spraying, and I think it could be a real advantage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brendan, did you have any?
No, I believe Gary's covered it all. Brendan McKay, Ellis County Public Works Director. Gary's pretty well covered it, and we've all discussed on the road tour and various other times about the complaints that commissioners have received and Public Works Department has received about the debris removal, the sapling trees, the trees in the right-of-way, and the spraying. We've got 1,350 some miles of roadway. That's 2 guys spraying, and Gary can't go down the road at 70 miles an hour and spray. So trying to get everything, it's the prime time to get it. And if he can't get to it, we're trying to get mowers out to those problem areas, but it kind of throws a wrench into the Road and Bridge operation when you have to pull someone off a piece of equipment from a road project to go mow a mile stretch of road that if he had the correct or better number of staff, he would have been able to address it before it got to that point. So I think it's going to be a good change if the commission approves it for the members of the public too.
So with the 1,300 and some or 1,400 miles, is that also including when we go out and contract for KDOT?
No.
Okay.
That's
I figured
just our
that
county
was-
right-of-way miles. We do all the KDOT work. Other thing too, like just this week, or yesterday and the end of last week, the landfill with the way they've enlarged, there's a lot more work there, and there's a lot more I could be out there doing earlier. It's gotten pretty woolly in there, and just a lot of that stuff needs jumped on quicker. And the new Public Works property, we have a lot more area that we got to take care of now, and we could do a lot better job with this.
Okay.
I think it sounds like a positive.
Yeah, and the trees. There's a lot of trees, and with only, one person that I could send out, we can't send one person out with a chainsaw, where if there's more people, they can take chainsaws and the bucket truck, and
Yep.
we can utilize all that equipment too.
I think it sounds like a positive, and I think we'll see a big impact once we get it up and going.
Right, right. Yeah, we'll have to get it all figured out, but yeah.
Right, it'll be a little rough to start, but I think it'll be the right direction.
There are 5 mowers as well. Sorry, there are 5 mowers. So like in the fall, when we do our big mow through the final year, there'll still be road and bridge staff helping man those pieces of equipment, just because you're good, but I don't think you can run 2 at the same time. Not like yet, until I start making more remote control, but
Will this help with having some of this stuff mowed a little more often? Will this help when we go to pull our shoulders up and maintain our roads
yes.
with not having as much material to deal with?
Yep. So when we go to do a full pull shoulder and overlay, we run a mower out there ahead of time to mulch everything up. That way you don't have the 3-foot tall stands of grass growing out of the windrow when you move it across. When you're just doing a slight clip to reshape, get rid of the slight bowl in the roadway. If we mow it, if we try and mow it when we can, mowing does a lot better job than a grater blade cutting it off, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do for the roadway to keep it safe. So fortunately, sometimes you end up with those taller windrows, but they break up pretty easily after being worked about twice. That compost debris in the windrow ends up disappearing at that point.
Yeah, it will be a good deal because a lot of the people that I've talked to out in the community were, when I was telling them about this, what we were doing, they're all for it because of that reason, just to get their ditches mowed. So it will make a good impact.
What about the wintertime? Do you see any impact on the wintertime? The grass isn't growing, maybe not spraying? as much? Trees.
I mean, there will be times when there's a lot of snow that we're going to have to find something. I mean, in the past, we've always had a lot, we've been building our own trucks. With our old building, we've always, through the last years that I've been there, I mean, we've always had kind of a remodel project that we did on our own. So we will have to find some things, whether they're going to need sign work or maybe 911 signs. I don't know, we'll find stuff that we'll have to work with them to keep people busy when it's cold and snow and
Right,
that type of stuff. But yeah, that's
Always
the
something to do.
time we will have to fill.
right.
Yeah,
With the amount of trees that are growing on our,
yeah.
it's going to be a never-ending thing. I hate to say never, but there's a lot.
The
It just-
couches that Commissioner keeps finding.
Yeah.
Sure, we could work it. You could just take them to the landfill instead of putting them in the ditch, Nathan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's a never-ending
Yeah.
problem either with trash dumping and debris dumping in the right-of-way. And like you said, in the wintertime, that's the thing that they'll be able to do regularly when not spraying in the wintertime, not mowing. So hopefully the grass isn't still growing, the weeds aren't growing then. They'll be able to go on patrol more routes, more of the blacktops and more of those out-of-the-way places that don't get noticed until they're a major issue.
Okay.
And the temperatures will be nicer where it ain't so,
Not gonna be 110 out trying to pick
Right.
up couches and
yeah,
mattresses and
yeah.
Can you explain by going to 1.5 mils, the herbicide revenue then changes?
Yeah, when we reach that point, then we could sell at cost. We could sell at what we pay for it.
Okay.
Below that, we have to sell it at 50 to 75% if we're below 1.5 mil. So when we reach that point, we'll turn around and sell it for what we,
On the budget, though, we show revenue actually going down, so from 900,000.
because I think when we get to that point, sales will go down.
Okay.
We will not be selling near as much. I mean, we're going to kind of have to see how it falls. I mean, it's going to be the best deal around. I mean, people will still be buying at cost instead of buying
Yeah.
below cost.
Okay.
But, yeah, so I think we'll sell a lot, but we won't sell this near as
Okay.
much as we have. And so that's why we went down with that. We also brought the expenses for at least 3 of our herbicides, which are the main ones that with the 2,4-D, the dicamba, and the Tordon. We, brought them down.
the chemical.
Yeah.
The chemical costs are also less this year, so
Yes.
you're gonna have less revenue if it costs less to get it in.
Yes, they have started to come down some. This year has been high, but they've been dropping. So that was another anticipation is why we lowered
Okay.
those numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's, again, we've discussed this before, I think that's a fair trade-off to go up to cost, but,
Yeah.
be able to cover more as far as employees and taking care of trash and trees. I think that's a good trade-off.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Okay.
Nothing. Thank you.
I'm good with it.
Okay, well, thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brendan.
Okay. Fire Department grant, Darren?
Morning, Commissioners. Darren Myers, Director of Fire and Emergency Management. Before you this morning is the approval for the commission to allow the fire district to accept a grant from the Kansas Forestry Service. We applied for a grant, roughly $11,000, which is a 50% match, up to a maximum of $5,000. Put the request in to purchase wildland firefighting boots, and these boots are different than the structural boots that they wear during a structure fire. They're lighter, they're better ankle support for traveling, walking out into the pastures and the fields and such. And they're also quad certified for EMS, tech rescue, wildland firefighting, and hazmat operations. So there's multiple purposes where they can be used instead of the more expensive structural type boots. The grant was awarded up to $5,000, so there'd be roughly, depends when the final bids come in, which I've got most of them already, but if we were to spend that $11,000 that the grant amount was worth, the fire district would pay the $11,000, and then the Forestry Service would reimburse us the $5,000 back. So there's still an expense of roughly $6,000. We do have budgeted in our annual budget to replace and purchase new personal protective equipment. So this would fit into that line item budget, which we haven't purchased any boots this year for. So no true budget impact, but there is about a $6,000 expense roughly. But that'll be more closely identified to that $6,000 mark once the final bids come in with the boots.
Are these boots going to be per person?
Correct.
They'll be ordered per individual?
So in anticipation of this, we ordered 2 types of boots to find out, to make sure that they're of quality. We've got some recommendations from some members of the Forestry Service, and we're getting them in. We're going to, essentially, they're going to let us trial test wear them. And then once we get to that point, one of the low vendor at this point was going to allow us to purchase or to order about 10 pairs of boots ranging, say, from size 8 to 12, 8.5 wide, 9.5. We'll get them all out here, and we'll identify the 35 to 40 firefighters that will get the boots. They'll try them on and size, and then we'll order them. And then if we have a wrong size, they'll replace them or swap them out with the correct size.
Are these a daily wear boot?
They can be. They're considered station boots, like if an EMS department will want to wear them more on a daily basis. They are just not necessarily just for EMS. They're dual certified, so they're heavier leather. They got the composite steel toe. They got a steel shank in them for puncture resistance. So you could wear them on a daily thing, but they're going to be mainly used for those types of calls that we do run on the fire side.
Okay.
So the weight of them, I'm in understanding they're a little bit lighter than the,
They're a little bit lighter than the structural boots, but they're heavier than a normal station
Okay.
boot that you would wear on a daily basis. It's more, but they're, like I said, I haven't tried them on yet. They're ordered, just the 1 pair, but they're supposed to be comfortable like a good work boot. Gore-Tex lining, waterproof, and they have insoles that you can replace, so that way if you're truly worried about comfort, you can double up the insole, or you can replace your insole once a year. They're $11 a piece, so it's not a big impact there either.
so which company's going to get them first? Or are we going to kind of spread them out throughout
We'll
the,
spread them out through the entire county. They'll get about a third of the firefighters. We're up close to 100, so if we buy 35, that's roughly a third of the department.
Okay.
So we're trying to get that many people into size. It'll probably almost be a first come, first served basis, but we'll make sure that all 6 companies have at least a couple out of each. Especially the ones we'll try to identify that are responding more frequent and more often, so that way we can ensure that they're getting used more, and we can get upfront feedback in case we need to do something different with a different boot on if we continue to apply for grants.
good. Commissioner Burgess?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Best boots are free boots.
Or 50% off, I
Yeah,
guess.
50% off.
Okay, Public Works Facility, Darren?
The last item on the agenda this morning is to talk about the continued effort to get final plans and the design process done for the new Public Works facility just north of town on 250th. We've met with GLMV the other day. Kurt and Brendan and I met with them, but we have constant emails, web, whatever you call them, Zoom calls or whatever, on changes and different questions and things that we've done. We've got the building down to 100% final plans, but they're probably more like 99.95 because we sent them 13 items yesterday that we reviewed on the final plans. Some of it's just clarifying different items. For instance, in the break room, we have, currently at the public workshop, we have 2 vending machines. Those 2 vending machines are going to move to the new facility. Well, in the process of designing their break room up there, they have them still located in an old location and in the new location. So it's a simple thing of that, is just cleaning up the plans to eliminate that on the drawing. But the next step is to have the commission decide and give us the direction that we start working with GLMV to go out to bid. Hopefully by the end of this week, they'll have the true 100% final plans complete. One thing I was visiting with Commissioner Younger about before all the commissioners got here is we met with Midwest Energy last week and identified where the power lines and power access will come into the facility. So that was one of the items of those 13, is to make sure they update their civil plans for where the utility poles will be at. But if once they get those done, they hopefully get the final plans done this week and then issue a bid date so that it's released in the coming week or so. And then it would be out for bid for, we're anticipating 4 weeks. And would plan to, once they're released, there'll be digital documents. So we won't have a set of plans essentially. But any vendor that's willing or wanting to wish or bid on it will be able to access GLMV's site and our site to get a link to download the documents. So I will reach out to current local vendors within town. There's some in western Kansas that do metal building construction. Reach out to them as well. And then GLMV is going to make an effort to notify vendors that they've worked with on like KDOT projects and different companies around the state. Obviously, it would be our goal and wish that we would be able to stay local with a local contractor, but as the commission knows, there's a lot of construction going around town with the school district and with Grow Hayes' building. There's a building out at the airport that's metal construction, a fire station, work out at the Fort Hays State University. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to get a bid that's competitive within our local area, but try to do our due diligence to make sure we have multiple bids come in that hopefully are on budget. But as the commission is well aware in the market and the world that we live in today, with the inflation rates that have been out there, I would anticipate that our bids will come in more than what the estimate is. So that's kind of our time frame. Hopefully by mid-August, we would have the bids back, which would allow us a couple weeks to review them with GLMV and have potentially individual meetings with the commissioners to fill you in on everything, go over the details. And then that first week of September, have an award a bid to move on to the construction phase. And at that point, it'll be time to consider, we'll have GLMV come back up and visit with the commission, and so the commission can make the decision if we want to have construction administration for the project that GLMV will support. So that's having somebody here on site, managing the project, managing the construction, all the as-builds, the changes, the change orders, the communications, the code verification, compliance, inspections, all of that would be done under that construction administration contract with GLMV.
Okay.
So with that, I would just ask that the commission would allow us to proceed with the bidding phase of the Public Works facility.
I support it. Get it going.
Are we doing a bid and a bid alternate?
Yes, there's as the commission is aware, this is the plan for how the facility is constructed has changed since the January when the two new commissioners come on. The plan before was to build the new facility, the main building, and then move out of our current facility, sell our old facility, and use those funds to build any alternates or the cold storage facilities, the fuel islands and things like that. Since that time, it's been the commission's intention that it was best to do the cold storage building, the fuel island, and the main building all at once, which increases the cost obviously up front, but it saves it in the future because we're not time value of money 2 years down the road. There are some alternates. The fence is something that we're considering. We think that it's important to secure our equipment, have a lighted yard with utility poles with lights, but also have a fence around it. That's one alternate. One of the alternates is in the cold storage facility is to have the base bid has in the center portion of the 12 bays is a dirt floor or rock. Have that upgraded to concrete floors. In the cold storage building, there's two rooms on each side, if you remember. One's for the housing of noxious weed chemicals and equipment, and the other is this construction shop where they build forms and work on small equipment, tools and such. The alternate there is to have those wrapped and insulated with mini splits in them. So that way it's a more easable, or a nicer place for them to work in. I don't remember, there's not a whole lot of alternates. The fence, the cold storage building.
Is the overhead crane just out, or is that part of an alternate as well?
That was one of the recent changes in the last couple of weeks, that when Brendan met with his staff, they said that they would prefer to take the bridge crane out, which was, I don't remember, a couple $100,000, because it went through the whole entire facility, which allowed us to actually have some design savings in the structure as well, because we don't have that crane, but also had to pass through walls. So they asked to remove that, and then back in the mechanics office and part storage clean room is to have that temperature controlled, not just by heat, but with an HVAC unit. So a couple $1,000s for an air conditioner, added an expense, and a couple $100,000 from savings on the bridge crane. Felt that was a good change off, and they said that the equipment that they currently have out there with A-frame lifts and everything, that they would be able to use it. But all that.
Yeah. So with the post being every 20 feet, they felt that would restrict some of their movement of materials and equipment inside there. And then without having the parts storage, HVAC and climate controlled, a lot of that is paper filters and things like that, and leaving those out in high humidity could degrade them further. So currently our part storage is HVAC controlled to keep those, or climate controlled. So in removing the bridge crane, they asked that that parts room be added back in. Their office was air conditioned with a mini split. Now it's just going to be conventional, like residential furnace and air conditioner condenser, like the rest of the building is in that area. So it was cut $165,000, I believe, is what the bridge crane was, and add $7,000 potentially for an HVAC system. The other add alternate that I can think of was the pad for the salt sand shed, and then also the fuel island, whether we would construct that ourselves, and then the signage above the entrances for noxious weed and road and bridge, and then a sign potentially by 183 to let people know that that's road and bridge and noxious weed up there, Public Works. I believe there was 6 or 7 alternates, and I think that's all of them that we've covered so far.
What about the floor?
That's what I was going to mention. That wasn't necessarily an alternate, but we did work. We like I said, I spoke to local contractors, KDOT official, and a local construction company. We discussed it, and we also discussed it with GLMV, and we changed almost the entire floor throughout the building. So the shop area itself, the main shop where they're going to have their scrapers, the loaders, and all that, that'll stay at an 8-inch concrete floor. However, when you start moving throughout the structure, like the mechanics office and the parts storage room, that goes down to 6 inches. Then you go all the way to the office area. That was reduced down to 4 inches, so that's half the amount of concrete there.
And then over on the noxious weed side, because there's not the heavy equipment, we reduced that down to 6 inches. So, and then one thing that we noticed is one of those 13 items that we mentioned was they still have the approaches, which is where the most obvious or best places that the concrete will crack. They had it at 6 inches. So we asked them to improve that to 8-inch depth approaches. So that way, when you approach a building and you have that sudden stop, that's where the most likely force, it's not rolling very slowly and stopping, it's coming to the stop before you get into the building, which will have that additional pressure to crack the concrete. So we asked them to change that from 6 inches thick to 8 inches.
Okay,
And then everywhere it's not 8 inches thick was the pavement mesh instead of rebar.
got it.
So we felt the pavement mesh works great if it's installed correctly
Yep.
on chairs and lifts, but concerned with it just being set in place and then try to lift it up and creating voids. So in those areas where there's the heavier equipment, it's not just them pulling onto it, it's when you put a jack underneath it, that all that pressure being in one point, we felt it would be better to keep it with 8-inch and rebar in that area so we're not experiencing early failure to that concrete. And one of the other changes we noticed was they had a brushed floor finish, like in the weld shop. We had that changed back to a sealed concrete floor to match the other area, the road and bridge shop side, for easier cleanup, basically.
Yep.
All the finishes are very basic. We took out all tile and for like wall finishes, all the floors are stained sealed concrete, so there's no flooring on the floor. The cabinets, desks, or the reception area and all that is all pre-manufactured with laminate countertops, so there's no solid surface with more expense there. We changed the water heater yesterday to have a tankless water heater. Where I'll be taking showers and everything, it's just basically mainly this hand washing. So they had a 50-gallon hot water heater with a recirc pump. As you know, they're only out there 8 to 9 hours a day, so we're heating water constantly at that point for 2/3 of the day where no one's even there. So if we put that on-demand tankless water heater in, it's going to save us a little bit of money in the future from not having those additional monthly expenses. And we get into a lot of little things like that, but we tried to get it down. We got from the initial estimate to where we're at now, we've reduced just over 10% of costs. And we did have a local construction company look at it to make sure that we're not over-engineering, the architects aren't over-engineering or doing anything that would make the building cost more, trying to make it sized appropriately, so that's when we order pre-engineered metal building that it'd be easy to design and construct and get the equipment.
As far as the mesh, what gauge are we going with? Because over the years, I've seen that mesh and it's always, like say, it's on the bottom.
So it's spec'd with having chairs and lifts, so it's not in
Right.
place and full. If I'm not mistaken, it showed that.
Yeah,
Drawing.
and the gauge of the wire mesh would be 6 gauge, was what was recommended for the thickness of the wire and the mesh. And then the rebar was 1/2 inch, I believe.
Yeah, it's the same.
5, so it's sufficient. And that goes back in having the chairs and lifts in there. When we have construction administration out there, it's like we have on our Northwest Business Corridor project. Buck Driggs they're doing slump checks on the concrete, the grade inspections. That's essentially what the construction administrator will do with this project. So if the contractors aren't putting chairs and lifts and pulling the rebar or the mesh up halfway into the concrete or things like that, that will be notated and fixed throughout the process to make sure corners aren't being cut and things are being done right according to code.
Which, talking to Douglas County, who was maybe 5 years ago, they had their shop completely rebuilt. That was one of the biggest takeaways they passed on to us, was to hire a construction administrator for it, because we can't be everywhere all the time. And the savings that their county experienced by not hiring a construction administrator, they paid more than that to fix problems that have come up after construction. So at your next KAC meeting, talk to Keith Browning, the LTAP. He was their public works director out in Douglas County when that was being constructed.
Commissioner Burgess?
That's all I got. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll let them know to proceed.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, county commission report or county administrator report?
Nothing, just see you here in about an hour at the other location to start the next meeting.
Okay. Commission reports?
I have nothing as well.
No, I attended Ellis City Commission last evening. They just went through their budget stuff, so they don't feel any sympathy for about what we're about to go through, so.
And the only thing I have was, last week we were, Darren and I were at the fairgrounds and the chamber came out and, it was a pretty nice thing. There's a lot of volunteers out there, so gosh, if you can volunteer for something or run for something in our community, we need everybody to keep going and doing what everybody's doing. It's just like we heard with Gary, you know, hopefully we can get some help, you know, for mowers. So if you can, go volunteer for something, even if it's an hour a week or 5 hours a week. It does make an impact on our community and county. So that's all I have. Meeting adjourned at 9:10. Is that what you got? Nope, 9:06, sorry.